Whoa.
And we're live. Hello and welcome to the 45th episode of Game Theory Gang. I'm your host, Matty Allen, here with Brissology and ChrispyMan of HexFire.io. How are you guys doing tonight?
Hello,
Doing good.
Matty.
All right. Well, we got a bunch of people watching live and on a replay. Last week, there were 3,100 people who tuned into the show. Shout out to you. Hit the like and subscribe button and get excited because I can feel that this show is going to be a good one.
Woohoo.
We just got an update from Richard Hart, I would say about 20 minutes ago. So this is hot off the press. Had to change the title of this video to say breaking PulseChain V3 progress. And so we're going to be sharing that update, which came to us through Richard's Telegram group, t.me/hex news. Are you guys subscribed to that one?
I am.
Hex
Going on.
news? I think so.
Going on 4 years. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
Well, whenever it opened.
And this was probably the lengthiest update I've ever seen Richard give on PulseChain progress. I guess I'll go ahead and just read it out here on stream since this is breaking news. Then we can see if any of it makes sense to us as non-PulseChain devs, and then we can get to the rest of the topics today for the really cool stuff that ChrispyMan prepared for the Hex Rich List portal that he made, and I'm sure much more. So here from Hex News just minutes ago, it was sent out. It says PulseChain Aragon client status as of today. And then it says, unless you're a developer, and really, even if you are, this stuff is hard to understand. Some people like these kind of updates, though. The bodies are all downloaded now onto the indexing and Merkle tree building stages. The rest of the stages are mostly CPU intensive and is what makes Aragon the choice for block explorers and other utilities that use them. At the end of these stages, total disk space usage will be in the ballpark of 2 terabytes. Stage 9 is the compute state stage, which will build and verify the Merkle tree. It only takes this long to sync when building from block 0. After building, Aragon will use BitTorrent to download the state from existing nodes. You could read up on the stages that Aragon uses to build the blockchain/indexes. And there's a link here to the GitHub and the account for Ledger Watch and Aragon. It says, if you want to understand why it's wildly used by third-party tools, specifically stages 5 to 14. And you know, just to comment, I mean, we can certainly predict that there will be people on Twitter, you know, explaining this. You got KDP, you got K4K, you got a number of people who like to explain this stuff. Jesse from all over the place. Just Ask Jesse can sometimes decode all of this. So I'll keep going with the reading here. A deployment module for Terraform was built yesterday, which controls how many of each node are deployed at a time. Short circuits if a deployment fails or the node's health checks are failing. This is useful as changes to configuration that during development caused the consensus nodes to not start up. After rolling back the changes, the chain would not start again without a custom build of Prism. In parentheses, a bug we found and worked with Prism developers back in December. Now, we now have protection from this happening, which results in safer and faster deployments. Faster deployments because prior we used a static sleep to control rollout. Now we have a distributed lock. And when it's released, the next node begins. Good luck understanding all that. The TLDR, too long didn't read, is that development is going great. Well, how do you guys like to hear that?
Sounds
PulseChain
good to
development
me.
is going great.
There's your update, people.
That's the
Beautiful.
update.
Beautiful.
January 24th, 2023.
And I'm going to just link here in the chat for anybody who's not following this Telegram group that Richard created called HEX News. It's t.me/HEX News. So I just dropped that link there, and to give you an idea, it's 15,000 people today that are subscribed to HEX News, and only 715 people have seen this post from half an hour ago. So you're people watching this are probably just finding out about this, and people are starting to tweet on Twitter about what it all means, and we just kind of brought it up.
Saying that like the system state copy is going to be about 2 terabytes.
Yeah, that's what it sounded like. I think that's with all the history, right?
Yeah, I mean, so a block explorer is it's something that you want to have a good transaction history of everything and not have to, I guess, do a bunch of work later on to pull up what people have in different accounts. You actually can't really index every contract that ever gets launched and every possible address that could come off that. And even just kind of keeping track of what addresses have money in them that's something that the blockchain does really well. But in terms of being able to explore that in a block explorer, takes some planning and preparation and everything is my understanding. And so to have to have a system that's communicating that to like an archive basically, or to an index that then makes it easier to pull up, that makes a lot of sense. And that's what other blockchains do. I don't know if this is related at all to the hiccup that Charles Hoskinson's crypto had this week. Cardano got like paused, and they had to reboot it. But
I remember Richard saying, we just built a DDoS machine to help, protect our network. And, that's all he really said. And I just remember thinking, I'm like, to protect our network. I'm like, what if he turns it on like a different network? Like, I don't know, conspiracy theory. But what was I gonna say?
Do you want a hot take? I've got a hot take for you.
Yeah.
There's a lot of noise on Twitter right now about PulseChain V3 could launch any minute. And the pattern that I've seen on that is that lots of people have thought that PulseChain was going to launch, and myself included. I thought it was going to launch a long time ago, and that's fine. No expectations, and I want it to be the best it can be, and all that good kind of stuff. My take on it now that I've been through, a long period of when PulseChain, and mostly I've talked about that in the context of I want low fees, because me rejoicing, about getting $1 or $2 transactions on Ethereum is not ideal. But really the hot take is traders get wrecked. So if you're trying to be a short-term player and trying to play, some tweet that somebody's putting out, and you're trying to buy HEX and then flip it when V3 comes out, I don't know when it's going to come out. I don't know that anybody knows when it's going to come out, because they're unknown unknowns. And so I don't really see any problem with people predicting and people analyzing and trying to make sense of it. But if people are out there trying to make quick money or something, I think that's not the play I'm interested in. So see a lot of people here in the chat, a lot of people tuning in to see what the buzz is all about. Welcome.
Yeah, I mean, PulseChain, it's really, the main thing is really going to be about the low fees, because Ethereum is going to blow back up to, like $4,000 per coin again.
Yep.
And when it does that, the fees are going to be so high, it's going to make almost everything unusable. That's unless you're over on the Pulse chain. And that's going to be the real use case. That's when people are really going to wake up and see like why Pulse chain is around.
Yeah, I agree with you, Bruce. It wasn't too long ago, right? These $30 transactions that we have were 120. You know?
Yeah, I mean, someone just tried to do a transaction with me, and it was going to cost like $15 in gas fees. I'm like, and that's today.
Yeah,
I can't
the
imagine.
bear market.
I can't imagine when the price is much higher.
Well, yeah, I mean, we've got a lot to look forward to when it comes to PulseChain, and I think the excitement, continues to build, and it's it's really cool to be a part of a community of people who are, excited about time locking, about building cool stuff, about delaying gratification, and there will be a lot of people who play a short-term game when PulseChain comes out, and then there's gonna be everybody else who takes the long-term approach. And who do you think is going to do better?
Yep. Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, probably goes without saying that most people have been around for a long time, at least are aware of the trading being kind of like a losing prop. But there are quite a few people out there that, yeah, they are looking for that. I mean, I see it every day. You have to go very far to see somebody saying, "Hey, I sold at 23. I'm going to buy back at 22." At 2.2 cents versus 2.3, and maybe they make it, maybe they don't. I don't know. I just know that every time I try to do that, I always lose. That's what attracted me to the whole idea and sold me on the approach that Richard had come up with. Right, was because I did that enough times. I realized I couldn't do it.
It almost feels like the longer it gets delayed, the more people we save, because it's like the more people get trapped inside the Ethereum net, and so they will get a copy over onto the Pulse chain.
That's true. That's true.
It's looking good. I mean, and I'm not exactly sure why Richard is giving updates now, whereas in the past he hadn't. One speculation I have is that people are being nicer about it, and that's something that he said in the past is like, I'm not going to give any more updates because people are being so annoying about it, and maybe people are not being as annoying anymore, and that's why we're getting more updates. Or maybe it's closer in general. Who knows? But I am one to continue being a champion of, be nice about the Pulse chain.
Well, sure. I'm sure he's as frustrated as the rest of us over the time that it's taken. I mean, I'm sure he would have liked to have been done already. So I think
he's just, he's the CEO, he's the boss. He's just kind of getting all the big brains together to build the final product. But it's up to them to actually, it's up to the engineers to get it done.
Yeah.
So yeah. So
I can't wait, man. I know, I got, because I did go, I think we talked about this before about these copies of the POW and proof of work chain, and then so that Ethereum W and Ethereum Fair that's out there. And so I've kept my HEX out there. I haven't cashed out. Probably a bad move, but I just wanted to keep it, so I kept it. But when my stakes come due, I go complete them and kind of run through the paces, right? Make sure I'm handling it the way I would normally handle things. Man, what a difference! You don't even have to worry about gas; you just pay. You just click the button, and because it's so little, and even in proportion, it's so little. It just makes me think about what Briz was saying How am I going to feel when I simply want to do a transfer or a swap and it's $150, and how strong I'm going to feel about getting over to Pulse, and God help Ethereum. I mean, what the hell are they going to do? Well, I mean, does it just become? I always thought about this. Maybe they changed their viewpoint. They being the greater community, that it's just going to be a store of value. How can it be an operating system at those kind of costs? I mean,
Right.
I'm totally with you, and I checked on my HEX on ETHW recently. I do it about every month or two, and I can totally relate to the feeling of how cool it was to not have to think about the cost, because the cost of doing something on the blockchain was sub penny, and that's where we started in HEX. When HEX was launched, that was the cost of doing a swap. That was the cost of doing a transfer, was pennies. And so how cool will it be? Because look, HEX on ETHW, it didn't work out as well as I thought it would. And that's part of the complexity and the interesting game theory of all this, right? Is that people are waiting for PulseChain. That's where they want to do their transactions. That's where they care about low fees. And so people, especially who try to pretend like all the other cheap, empty L1s are a big deal or something, they're not taking into consideration the game theory that there are so many people who care exclusively about PulseChain. It's going to have the biggest group of people supporting it. I think in the history of anything being launched of this magnitude, certainly the comprehensive and integrative nature of PulseChain being integrated with a DEX of PulseX, having an overlap of people who are time locked in HEX and who were the primary sacrificers for PulseChain and PulseX. I mean, there are a lot of things that I think make a lot of sense to us as a community to see why it's going to be so successful. And maybe people who haven't spent a couple of years thinking of the game theory of all this, they're going to be really surprised.
Just the sheer fact of having everything work just like flawlessly and having all the numbers all lined up and matching when it launches, that's pretty crazy in itself.
Have you played around with HEX on ETHW or ETHFair at all, Bristology?
A little bit, using the ICOSA front end.
Okay,
that's one of the ways. Yeah.
Yeah, the icosahedron front end supports it. So
did you know my front end supports it?
Is it the TShare.app or
go.tshare.app? Yes.
Nice. All right, I'll check that out.
Yeah.
Well, I know we're going to spend a lot of time on the topic, but with that ETHW, somebody, whoever we are, is doing their thing over there with HEX. They are staking and restaking, because if you notice, the TShare rate there has kept up pretty good with the TShare rate on the ETH side. It's only lagging a little bit. So what does that mean to me? Why do I say it that way? Well, when they did the fork, right, they kind of like destined in the future. We already knew kind of what the TShare rate was going to be, around what it was going to be, because those stakes had already been made. So you're forecasting that into the future. And here we are, a couple months, 2, 3, 4 months later, right? I think it was September that it came out, and the TShare rate's keeping up. The only way it could do that is people would have to be ending their stakes, and they would have to be ending stakes that produced a lot of yield, which means that probably earlier people in HEX who had larger, mid to larger size stakes, went out longer, they're actually going and ending their stakes. So that kind of sends a different message to me, is what do they know? Maybe they don't know anything possible. What do they know that I don't know? And why are they going through the trouble of preserving their HEX on that chain?
Are they talking to the devs?
Maybe they've got some bikini clad devs over there. I don't know. I don't know, but it's keeping up. So whatever that means, I'm going to keep mine up. I'm not going to let them, go to waste.
Yeah, I need to check on mine because I know I did keep up with them for a little while, but I kind of forgot about that chain. To tell you the truth.
It's easy, right? I mean, that's another thing, Briz, man. With this point, even if you were just like a low guy, kind of like just participating a little bit, you've got like 6 times as much work now to keep up with everything because you got copies and copies and coins, all these tokens, and you got to remember to mint this and mint that. I mean, I need a goddamn checklist
Yeah,
just to keep track.
I have a favorites folder that I have to like put so many things in favorites, and my hex folder is getting so long. I have to scroll down to the very bottom to get to the latest thing I saved. And so now I made a cleanup folder in my hex folder where I'm just like throwing links that I haven't looked at in a very long time.
All right. So let me ask you this. We were talking about this, me and a couple other guys this week. Do you believe there's a point where there's too much for you to be able to keep track of? Do you believe that's possible? That at some point there's
Yeah,
too
no,
much?
totally. I mean, you only have enough mind space for like a certain amount of stuff, especially if like you're working, you have a family, you got hobbies outside of your work, and then, you're interested in crypto, you're trying to keep up with all this stuff. And now there's like new air coins being dropped, and you're like, oh my God, how much money should I throw at Dodeca? You
No,
Yes,
no money.
now let's go. Yeah. So I mean, so there's a limit, right, to what any of us can really pay attention to. Now, here's what's bullish about Pulse, right? We were thinking about this and talking about it. With the Pulse launch, there won't there's people can do a lot more than I can do, and maybe there's going to be people that'll be all over the place. But man, people who go into the Pulse system, they're probably going to go in and never come out. Meaning there's just too much to do in that one system to be messing around with a whole bunch of other stuff. So maybe it's an 80-20 rule. Maybe 80% of the people that go in, they're just going to be messing around with tokens and protocols are all within Pulse. They're not even going to have time to go back out and look at anything else.
They're going to be basically born into the pulse sphere,
Yeah.
pulseverse, and they're not going to want to even check out the Binance chain, the Ethereum chain, the Polygon chain, nothing like that. I mean, that's kind of how I feel like how I am with Ethereum, where I'm like, I don't really want to go to these other chains unless I have to.
Yeah.
Well,
I
and the
think you'll see that.
incentives have to be right. And so
Yeah.
that's one thing that you'll probably notice is that the amount of stuff to do on the blockchain that's given to hex holders or that appeals to people who are in hex, it will continue to expand until it reaches the limit where people aren't paying attention. And then you'll see the value of the things that people do pay attention to, goes up accordingly. And so it's like there is kind of a cost to people's attention, even if there's free money involved. It's like, well, how many of my airdrop wallets did I really go and mint this airdrop on because it was only $5 and the cost was too close for the gas fee that I would have on that. And so I mean, but that brings it full circle back to PulseChain in that that equation changes a little bit. The game theory changes a little bit. If the cost of transactions is lower, then people might be willing to participate in more things or whatnot, because the payoff will be greater.
Yeah, sure.
And how easy is it to get onto those other chains? That's another factor too.
Well, I mean, consider the fact that everything that exists on PulseChain could be wrapped and bridged to Ethereum, could be wrapped and bridged to other blockchains, and to create cross-chain liquidity, perhaps. But essentially, whether you have the liquidity in an AMM or you have people porting it between blockchains, either way, you've got liquidity there that's based on the holders themselves. And so that's kind of interesting. Like for example, even though there won't be the same amount of liquidity between HEX and PulseX that there is on the AMM as there is between the holders of HEX and PulseX, that'll still be, a huge overlap there. And I think that really changes the incentives and changes the psychology of the, how people buy and sell based on how those two things are linked, how you have Hart's law in a sense. I mean, I think Hart's law is more specific to the actual coins that are held on an AMM, but you could even extend it, a little bit further and say that, if you have all these OG Ethereans like the God Whale, who is holding, millions and millions and millions of dollars of Ethereum, but maybe, the origin address could have billions of dollars of Ethereum for all I know. And so that there is a certain amount of liquidity between those that's off chain, in a sense. Does that make sense?
I think so.
Yeah.
There's liquidity that's like, kind of there's different levels and layers to liquidity. So it's kind of interesting. There's lots of people who are just joining us now, and we're just discussing that there was an update about PulseChain, the most detailed one we've ever seen, and it was distributed first, I saw, through t.me/hex news. And so people who are following that Telegram channel that Richard has may have been the first ones to know. I'm checking Twitter to see if he updated on there too, but it'll be interesting to see kind of what the pattern of updates is and everything. And now Richard, I can see too, is he's getting very close to crossing the 300,000 follower mark on Twitter.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
At 295 right now. Wow.
Pretty big.
Very cool.
I can't wait to see it hit 1 million. That'll be probably 6 months, right?
Ooh.
I remember when he was at like 46,000.
You remember 46,000?
Yeah, I think so. I think that wasn't like that long ago either. Like it was like after HEX launched.
Very cool.
And yeah, he's like really grown his social presence by quite a bit in the last like year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
Now I got a handful of things before we get into the other topic we have for today. Got a handful of things that are just kind of teasers I can throw out there. There's really stuff that I'm super, super excited about.
All right.
So first of all, it looks like there will be a new HEX Rewind video coming out soon.
Oh, nice. That'd be cool.
So if you haven't ever checked out the first two HEX Rewind videos, I mean, these are my favorite HEX videos. Like favorite HEX recap videos are made by HEX Cadet. And so you can go to the YouTube channel for HEX Cadet, CADET, or you can just search HEX Rewind 2021, HEX Rewind 2020. And these are brilliant videos that were put together. And I'm just so excited to think that the next one's going to be dropping soon.
Do we know who makes those?
HEX Cadet.
HEX Cadet, awesome. Well,
yeah, and
thank you so much. Those are
I think he's in the 4th year at the academy. So he's going.
It's also a really great example of somebody who has been so consistent over the years to make something that's special to us in the community and really shows us what we've been through. All the ups and downs is really cool to look back on. So again, if you haven't checked that out yet, I'll link to it here.
I remember like sitting my buddy and his wife down and putting on the 2020 Rewind video. I'm like, hey guys, check this out.
Yeah,
we just sat there and watched it for like 15 minutes. I was like,
it's amazing.
Wait till we have 5 years of those strung together, man.
I know, right?
A decade rewind.
Yeah.
And then
pretty cool.
Another thing to tease here is that I'm making really good progress on announcing my second mass hex meetup.
Nice.
So, the first one was in Las Vegas. It set the record at the time for the greatest number of hexagons that came together all at once. It was about 369 people who bought tickets, and that was on like June 23rd, 2021.
I remember there's that picture in front of the Rolex store.
Yes.
That was cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
I tried to find myself in that picture. I'm way in the back. I'm like, where's Waldo?
I turned that picture into a meme.
Yeah,
where it was like,
yeah,
it was like the little kid holding the lady's hand, and he's like, "Mom, who are those people? So don't look to me. I don't want you to be."
Did you try to go in the did you try to go into the store when we were there and they kicked us out?
No,
Yeah,
I wasn't actually at the Rolex store.
Yeah, well, I mean, they wouldn't let us in the Rolex store. It was like one person at a time or something. It was just something weird.
Probably pretty smart. They didn't want to be like rated, flash rated, you know?
Yeah.
I also have to beg for people's forgiveness because I did really think that I was going to do the next meetup in Austin, Texas. I love Austin, Texas, and I still greatly intend to do a meetup there in the future. But the part where I said that would be my next meetup might not be the case. There are a number of factors that kind of go into that, and but at the end of the day, I think that I have a much more clever, fun idea planned, and I have to secure a couple things before I roll it out so that it can be like brand consistent and that I can be sure to deliver on what I'm.
So you're saying you haven't chosen the location yet because you need to work out the details?
I'm saying that it looks like Austin, Texas will get pushed to probably the third meetup. And it won't be the next one that happens.
So this one is going to be where, on the moon? Is that where we're
I have not announced it yet because if I tell you the location, it might give away the rest of it. But yeah,
very cool, man. I'm excited.
Yeah. Like the second event that I ran, that actually beat the highest of stakes for the most people who showed up. And that was the HEX conference in Las Vegas, hexpo.vegas, that happened on March 6th through 9th last year. And so so that was about 555 people who paid for tickets and showed up. And so I still hold the record for the biggest HEX meetup. I don't, and if somebody wants to try to take it from me, that I encourage you to do so. I support other people putting on events because I like to go to events too that I don't have to focus on planning. The other hint that I'll drop tonight is that the next meetup that I'm planning is not planned to be on March 6th through 9th. It's gonna be just a little bit later in the year, and so that's kind of, just to give people enough time to buy the dip and all that.
Sounds like Salt Lake City, Utah to me.
I can't comment. So, but yeah. So I'm really excited. I mean, that it takes a good amount of planning, and then just the community comes together in like so many awesome ways. And so you'll continue to hear me give updates about this over time. But I'm definitely getting closer, and I'm really getting excited about the next event because I think I will outdo myself.
That's awesome.
That's the plan.
All right. Well, the rest of us are in the dark, so we'll just have to wait.
I'm excited to hear where it's gonna be at.
Yeah. Let me see. And are there any other big things to talk about? Oh, I did do I did a demo of Time Pays Me on the PulseChain testnet for the first time on Hex Therapy Live in the second half of the episode on Thursday. And that went really well. Where I also went to Funding Jim's second weekly space that he did for PulseChain builders, and spoke at that to give people updates on kind of where we're at and really how that's evolving to really kind of help to lead people to Hex and PulseChain and to give people the power to time lock who are already into it. And so right now I'm looking at audit firms and talking to other developers to see what audit firms they use and how that's gone for them and all that good kind of stuff. But definitely a lot to look
stream.
forward
I'm
to.
gonna have to check out that demo.
Yeah. I was requesting to unlock 1 billion Pulse tokens. So have to wait 7 days. Have to wait 7 days because of the
1
security
billion,
feature of being able to undo a hack.
Do you guys think Bitcoin will reach Richard's price targets of 10K in Prey or even 11K in Prey?
That's a great question.
Do we think? I think that it's still in the cards. It's still possible. Yeah. I mean, the only way I would think that might not happen is we go through another 2-3 months and actually continue an uptrend and make some crosses. But we're just not going to know. It's going to take some time.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't bet against it.
Time will tell.
Yeah. I mean, would it be super surprising to see? So, like one scenario, kind of looking back at what happened with the end of 2019. Would it be a crazy scenario for Bitcoin to kind of go up and to the right for a little bit, along with the rest of the market, and then at some point in another month or two drop 50%? That wouldn't be crazy. That happens, And so, what would 11 be? Maybe it gets up, Maybe it stays around here. Maybe it goes up to 25, goes down 70%. I don't know. But it certainly could.
The one thing I ask myself is like, what is the effect of all this money printing? And it's not just the monetary creation, but it's when it actually circulates and the price of everything goes up. Sometimes I question, like, is that something that Richard is taking into account with his predictions that have been historically, just spot on. It's like, I can't believe that I'm even questioning his call. And it speaks to like how much I think many of us get into this thinking of maybe this time is different.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe this time is different. And a lot of the times the meme tells us that this time is not different, that that cryptos keep doing the same thing. But that's part of why game theory is so interesting. It's part of why markets are so interesting, is because you change one little thing and it changes the whole equation. It's like with your private seed. If you change one word, then it changes the whole changes the whole private key. As I was demonstrating on my last episode of Hex Therapy Live, where I used dice to create a private key. And I was shocked. Nobody watched it. Like, Game Theory Gang last week got 3.1 thousand views, and Hex Therapy got, which is like unusually high. And then Hex Therapy was unusually low. And so maybe,
for whatever reason this week, I usually know when you're doing your streams and whatnot. I didn't see the second stream until like yesterday. I didn't see it pop up in any of my feeds or anything. I don't know why, but
I see in the comment section, Rockstar says Kathy Woods is getting out of GBTC. I saw that as well. That's like a black swan event where it's like that, and what else was the other one? Is the Mt. Gox coins might be distributed sometime soon. So there's a couple, reasons why, the price of Bitcoin could drop back down to those historic, 85% retracements. But we'll see if this stuff really affects the price like that.
Maybe she's accumulating dry powder to get into PulseChain.
Maybe.
I doubt it, but it could be. You know?
It's
Well, I sent her an email about it, so maybe she.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, no joke. Well, I didn't send it to her. I sent it to the guy who runs their crypto desk or whatever it's called. But
what did you say?
I said, this is the best thing since sliced bread. You got to come look at HEX, man.
Hey.
I forget exactly what I said, but I just described what it was we were doing and or what the contract does and the interest in it. I know, but yeah, they'll hear about it eventually. I never got a response, by the way, but Robinhood didn't get back to me either. So I mean, there's probably a lot of them.
We should mass email them.
Send them a postcard from Mexico.
Yeah, from Mexico. That's what we need to do. Is we need to at least start our own city somewhere so we can get a zip code.
Yeah, maybe that might be a good thing to do. Is get the addresses of all these like big exchanges and just send them the postcards every week. Mexico.
I'm sure they'd appreciate that. Trash. It might be funny, but I don't know if it's abuse, but it probably would result in being thrown away, I imagine. But maybe we'd win over some of those guys in the mailroom, though. I think they still have to do mail, because if you get paper mail, somebody's still got to sort it by hand, right? Most companies, anyways. So somebody's going to be looking at it.
Well, the other topic that we have for tonight is something that ChrispyMan came up with, and I had really intended to take a look at it early, but got spammed with all of the postcards from all the other cryptos that are trying to onboard me. Just kidding.
You had to go through all your mail.
But no, this is really cool. This is what the thumbnail is based on. It's called the HEX Rich List. All I know so far, and you can explain it to me, but all I know so far is it's a really big deal in Bitcoin to know what the top 100 addresses are, and that's where really the whole gamification of whales and sharks and everything kind of the genesis of all that. But with your portal, it seems like you have a way to sort out what's the top 100 for the OA and what's non-OA top 100 for both liquid coins, which is one story, and then for TShares, which is another.
Yeah. Well, in this case, no TShares, but that's another consideration. What's great about our HEX system is there's so much detail you can get into. And so as soon as we start talking about this, you'll see there's about 12 different paths we could take. When we share it out and start looking at it. So it's a work in progress. We got to, I've seen the rich list before out there. There's a couple websites where you can pull them up. But really giving the nod to Wales talking about it this week in a couple of different videos. And I was like watching it, and he was looking at it and making some conclusions from it. And I was like, we could do that. I find that I had recently been able to get all that data together, so it's updated. Now certainly you could always do it by hand, manually, try to put all that together, and some people have. But now I've got the thing updating every 4 hours, so we can kind of keep track of it. So it's a work in progress. So really looking for feedback from people, like, what is this? Is this just another novelty? So you can say, look, Bitcoin, we've got a HEX. You guys have Doge and Litecoin and Bitcoin rich lists and Ethereum rich lists, but here's the HEX rich list. Is it just that, and we take a look at it, or is there something really that we can draw from it? I had a real high level observation. Well, I'll wait until we look at it, but.
To me, the rich list was just looking at the Staker app and seeing like the number of sharks and dolphins, and there's the rich list right there. 92 sharks, 800 dolphins.
What are you?
I'm under the sea.
All right. Me too.
I'm an animal under the sea.
I'm an
Yeah, yes,
urchin.
yeah. I mean, the whole system of HEX to have these two games that are being played. The people who are holding liquid are hoping to trade, and people who are time locking are hoping to earn trustless yield. And you kind of need both. You kind of need both. And there's a little trader inside of all of us, even people who are diamond handed, and there's perhaps at least the potential for people to be more long-term thinking. At any moment they have mental clarity. So here we've got to add to the stream. ChrispyMan is sharing his screen, and it says draft in big letters, and he's got a portal here that references data that's found on hexfire.io. And yeah, can you walk us through what is on screen for those who can see the screen, and also those who are just listening audio only?
Yeah, sure. So what you can do is you can also go take a look online at the Bitcoin rich list. You just look it up. You'll find a couple websites that show it. So I stole the format, from that. Not entirely sure that how I have it laid out is the best choice. However, right, let's go through it. So you see this top section says HEX rich list, and it's circulating plus staked. So for this version, what I did was go get all of the balances for all of the addresses that are out there. And then I went and got all of the stakes for all of those addresses. And then if those stakes had any open, if any of those stakes were open, those addresses had open stakes, I figured out how much HEX they had right now. And that would be principal plus yield for the open non-expired stakes. And for the expired stakes, it would be the payout minus the penalties, the total payout minus the penalties. And good accounting, total payout minus penalties. And so that gives you kind of an idea of probably what, if I wanted to flex, right, I'd be like, look at all the HEX I got. This is my HEX, right? This is the number. And so with that, we end up with is a list of addresses with a total quantity.
So that's an interesting methodology that you used. Did I hear that correctly? That you basically what you're doing is you're calculating how much HEX somebody would have if they emergency unstaked everything today?
No. And that's the funny part, right? So in this version, this is just, hey, Maddie, I want to flex with you. Look at my staker app. Look how much HEX I got.
Okay.
Right? That's my total amount of HEX, right? And so it's kind of like the flex version. The other version would be emergency unstake, and I've got that one in cooking as well to build. It's not much different than this, except what it is saying, okay, you emergency unstake, how much HEX is going to come out? It gives you a slightly lower number, right? Depending on who you are and what address. Now for me, that's more of the Chicken Little approach. Like the sky's going to fall, all these people are going to get out all at once, and this is how much HEX is there, and this is where you sit. But I kind of think that from a rich list, this is just me talking, right? So I try to get feedback from people. From the idea of a rich list, what does that mean? Well, who controls the most HEX? That's what it means. And I think, right, who controls the most coins, the most tokens, and therefore,
that are liquid.
Yeah, well,
no, that are
liquid or staked, right?
Okay.
And so, if you want to look at it from this is a flex type of thing, like what's my status in the world, and that's important. You probably want to count all the HEX, right, including the yield to date. It's just one approach. And there's no reason you can't have multiple approaches to things. I mean, what are you going to use this for, right? Is really what the question is, right? So, like, I've got some observations about it we could dig into, right? We'll look at the numbers, but yeah. So I went that direction. Another direction would be to do the emergency unstake version. and that would show the total possible number of HEX that could be on the market at any one time. And we do have that already in a kind of a different way. I just haven't brought it together onto a chart. I've got it in the staking module where we know exactly if all stakes emergency end stake today, exactly how much HEX will come out.
Cool. Yeah. So this is, I think, way better than what you see on etherscan.io, which is you can see the top 100 addresses in any asset. But here, really, you can sort out the OA versus non-OA related. Is that right?
Well, in this case, what we're looking at right at the moment is not OA related on the screen. And so I include all stakes. All of them are in the data set. I include all wallet addresses. All of them are in the data set. Now, as far as OA related question mark, right? Those are suspected. I can neither confirm nor deny who the hell really is the OA, but we have a list of addresses that we suspect are OA related, and we suspect that because some members of the community went through and built, traced them to come up with a list of addresses that seem to have their origin at either the flush address or the CO3 address.
If my memory serves me, it was there was actually an additional assumption that was made than just what could be determined from chain analysis directly.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, very astute. And so what I think you're referring to is Das Baum. Some people know him, right? I think was one of the people that worked on the original list and did the original analysis. And then later on, Gunther had worked on this, Wolverine. And they've always said this, they've always maintained the same thing, to the best of their ability to figure this out, right? They're just tracing it. They're not saying definitively these are the addresses, they are not the addresses. But I think along the way, we also had observed, or they had observed maybe some addresses that acted like OA addresses. Yes. And the conclusion was made, and I think you can find that in some of the videos that were made by those guys, or maybe by Gunther, saying, hey, yeah, these addresses look like the OA. They act like the OA. They may be the OA, so they may be included. Yeah.
Such as, for example, like, doing the same amount of TShares or the same amount of HEX moving around as addresses that were more likely linked or directly linked to the origin address.
Yeah.
Like the first time they moved out of the adoption amplifier, they moved out in 1337 amounts.
Leet.
Yeah.
Yes. Which I had to look that up at one point. What is that, like a old gamer inside joke about being of elite status or something? And it's abbreviated LEET.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
You want to be an elite gamer, so that means you're like really good.
Yeah. And so early on, there were batches of Ethereum coins that moved around in the pattern of what was it, 1337. Yeah. And so that spells leet. And so I think the hex origin address had I guess was playing on that inside joke as well. So
that's one way of maybe kind of like tracking those things. But this is a really cool spreadsheet with all these numbers showing like the balance and how much USD you'd have in each of these categories.
Yeah, it's kind of eye-opening in a way, because you think but I really don't know. I mean, it's hard because there's so much data to go through. And so I'll show you what I did with this, Bruce. When we look at this list, so first I gave them categories, and I just used the standard approach that they've been using for for rich list, right? So you see these balance numbers here. So that's the range, right? So show me all the addresses, between 0.1 and 1 hex, right?
Hex.
And how many addresses are there? There's 3,993. And what percentage of all the addresses is that? That's 1% of the addresses, or 1.02. How many tokens are there? What's it worth? So that's dust, right? I mean, these two categories are dust that are hanging out there. And then what percentage of the overall tokens are they? And and then I also added after some feedback from some folks, what the liquid amount was and what the staked amount was that makes up these numbers. And so other than maybe some decimals being off, they look like they came out pretty good. And then to add to this, when you look at the address columns, the token columns, I threw in the bars here to kind of show you when one of them is the largest number. And so you can see that the category that has the most wallets when we look at the raw data is the 10 to 100 hex, which is pretty nominal, right? That's not very much worth at all. What's that, $2.50 worth of hex at the most, right? So again, a lot of dust. We're leftover hex, and it shows you those addresses, and also the big airdrop is in these two that show up in here, and we'll get into that in a second.
Everybody, hit the like and subscribe button now, and throw an emoji in the chat if you're still with us, because I'm always so impressed with how many people love this level of detail and come to the Tuesday night show because they're learning things and seeing things that hasn't been presented yet in this way before. So this is really phenomenal, and thank you to ChrispyMan for bringing this content to us. It's incredible.
This is real content.
Now this fourth category you have here that are addresses between 10 and 100 hex. Now that triggers a memory I have about how there was this big experiment done early on in hex, and it was kind of trying to see if it basically trying to address the scaling problems of Ethereum, and trying to see, well, could you do some sort of ZK rollup, a zero knowledge proof, and do an airdrop to a bunch of addresses, like maybe 100,000 or 150,000 addresses. And so I'm not sure who, but somebody had come along and put 100 hex or so into 100,000 wallets or something. And it's now people look back and over time maybe they've gotten less critical of, somebody was just doing that to pump up the numbers and pretend like there's more people in hex than there really are. I mean, look, there's a cost of putting 100 hex in people's wallets and proving that Ethereum can scale or not. And so, I would argue that it's important to keep in mind that was $50 worth of hex at the all-time high. And so if you were really trying to, I don't know, if you were really trying to fudge the numbers, then maybe you'd put 0.001 hex in everybody's wallet. But I think it's kind of cool that so much went out and that it proved something.
Yeah, it's undoubtedly FUD, right? I mean, I shouldn't say it's FUD. It was an experiment at the time that we were aware of, and it was cool that somebody did that airdrop.
Very cool.
It was Crypto Beetles, by the way.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah, Crypto Beetles behind the Monarch wallet.
Yeah.
So how much hex was that?
He sent out $50,000 worth of hex.
Yeah, we can look on the screen here. I'll show you what I did.
Okay.
So the guys that want to FUD the hell out of this, and there's been more than one video. So I set this at 100, right? So I used this filter up here and just said, show me the wallets that have 100 hex in it.
Cool.
Right. And so, and it's not just the wallets with 100 hex, it's between staked and liquid. But show me the hundreds, right? And so you can see in the 100 range, Maddie, we've got 150,000 plus addresses with 100 hex in it. worth $360,000.
Cool.
Now, I don't know if this was the intent, but think about this in the future. Hex goes up 20x, 30x, right? Well, you know what? Maybe people come collect their $150 they got in their wallet once they're aware of it. Maybe it is like becomes something that actually promoted and advertised Hex in the future, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if I suddenly realized that somebody had sent me, I don't know, pick a token that's actually a usable token out there, and it was in my wallet, and then I realized it was okay, and it was worth $500, I think I'd probably go get engaged, right? So
Yeah.
maybe, but also keep in mind, good practice has always been for people to not go back to their wallets. So a lot of this went out to wallets that probably were inactive. So I did the 100, and we only have one category that has 100 in it, so that's why it's clicked on there. You'll see at the bottom though, one of the things you can do is you can also come in here and look at the individual addresses, you know, and what that 100 is worth, the 230 or $2.39. You can look at the first time they ever had a Hex transaction, and then probably this is not correct. I have to go look at this because it doesn't look like that should be correct, unless somebody's doing something different with hundreds right now. But you can see what I was attempting to do is get all of the transactions in here. So maybe it's possible somebody's doing something new. I don't know. But you see all these hundreds in here. You know, these were first transactions early in the contract.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the intent, is to kind of be able to give that, also to show when the last transaction took place. So you would then know how many days it's been since this had any activity.
Oh, that's so cool. That's very useful information to analyze those addresses.
And then you can also look and see how many Hex came into an address and how many left, right? And that kind of gives you a balance overall at the end.
Is that 14 million there? Not bad.
Yeah, I know. So what I'm curious about now is, because I just saw that, that's what happens with all this stuff. I fall down the rabbit hole on this. It always surprises me, right? If my data is correct, we've had some 100 Hex movement recently. You know, maybe somebody's doing some testing, maybe they're doing something else. Don't know. But it always seems odd to me when I see things like this. Like 100's $2.50, right? Or $2.30. Someone's paying an awful lot of gas to move stuff around.
Yeah.
But I suppose that's a mystery for another day. Another thing to look at is it's not just the 100 number. So let's take a look at 101 and how that changes. We're going to go from 15 million tokens to something like 16 million. So we have another 10,000 addresses with 101. And if I'm not mistaken, 103 is or 102 is also a big number. Not quite too much more. But you can see that when you look at this kind of a range, you have that number. It changes a little bit, but about 16 million right in that 100 to 105 range. And so a lot of people came back to me and say, hey, you know, that's really not that important, those numbers at the low end. So, okay, I'm with you on that. So one of the things we want to look at this list that might make it more valuable to us is to say, okay, what's a reasonable amount of money that makes sense to do any transaction, or a reasonable amount of value? And I think 1,000 Hex or more probably makes sense, because it's about $23, $25 worth of Hex. And you see how the list shortened up now?
Yeah.
Okay, so I am using 1,000, so we're hitting right on that amount there. So shows you exactly how many we have here, how many addresses in each of these areas. And it's not a coincidence, I think, that since I did 1,000, it's 1927 times 1,000. So we end up with a 1.9 million. So that took care of the low end to kind of bound this out. And then the other question that came up was, what about OA related? Do you want to see OA related or don't you? And right now, OA is included. And so initially, you look at this 1 trillion number, like, oh my God, 1 trillion. Let's drop the OA. So including everything, right? That 1 trillion number goes down 700 million. By just taking the OA related, suspected OA out. So it gives you a little bit more manageable number. And remember, this does include yield. It does include yield. So I think.
What's the total number of HEX, like in total?
500 billion.
Yeah, 600 billion-ish, 580, 600 billion. But keep in mind, and that's one of the things, Burrs, when working with all these numbers kind of screws you up if I don't keep track of where I'm at and explain it fully. This includes yield. So the yield that's in here may not actually be part of circulating supply yet, right?
Like that's like 15 years down the road.
Yeah, it has to be minted before it comes out, and then it becomes part of ever minted HEX, which then gets inflated. But until it actually gets earned and minted, it has no ability to be inflated. So yeah. So this kind of gives you a little better idea of what's going on. And roughly speaking, usually you guys heard of Pareto before, 80-20.
Pareto
20.
distribution.
Yeah, distribution.
80-20 rule.
Yeah, 80-20 rule. So this doesn't quite match that. It ends up being more like 30% of all the addresses hold 70% of all the value. It looks like, just roughly, kind of looking at the numbers. Maybe it's something like that. So, depending on how you wanted to analyze it. So if somebody has a really great idea on how to do this a little bit better, maybe break down these balances into something that make more sense, I think that might be something to do. Like I said, I'm looking for what's the usability of this, other than to be able to, wave it and say, hey, listen, we can prove that we're less centralized than Bitcoin, right? Because if you or other tokens, because if you compare that, right, I think that 70% of the value in the top 30%, if that's correct, is actually a lot less centralized than the other tokens and coins out there.
That's awesome. That's good to hear. And now, just out of curiosity, since the thumbnail says HEX Rich List, let's say I'm somebody who believes that someday HEX will reach $1. Now, not financial advice, don't know when, don't know if, but let's just say I'm imagining a future where HEX is $1. Is there a way that you can punch in a number there and show me today if HEX hit $1? If how many millionaires we would have in HEX, or to ask it another way, how many people are millionaires in HEX terms that they have claimed to 1 million HEX or more as of today?
Oh, sure. Yeah, we can do that. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. You drop a what if in there so that you can just set it to a different value and it'll calculate it.
For the number of HEX tokens, can you change that from 1,000 to 1 million?
I can.
And then I'll see what the what it comes out to. 14,000 people who have 1 million HEX or more claimed, or like a claim to this based on the current HEX that they have in their stakes and in liquid. Is that correct?
Yep, that's what it alleges. Yep.
Okay, and then
I say that because I want to be careful in case I made a mistake. But yes,
yeah,
that's my understanding that we have there. So if somebody can verify that and let me know, that'd be good.
And in the category of having at least 10 billion to 100 billion outside of the OA, we have 3 that meet that criteria today.
Yeah, one of the things you can do with these types of charts, if we just go select that one, it'll show us the addresses.
Fascinating.
And you can come in here and look at those. You really want to dig deep, you could do that and see, like one guy's got some liquid, but the rest of this is all here. But then you see the days, since their last activity.
Interesting. And so there's one, or no, that's the total. So there's three that are in the $100 million range of HEX in that category of people who have 10 billion HEX or more. And there's one person, just for the people who are listening who can't see the screen. There's one address there that looks like it controls or will control, however you want to look at it, the USD value in their liquid and HEX stakes now is $384 million worth. Somebody else, a different address, $494 million. And the biggest one that seems to be not OA related, according to some methodology, is $811 million worth of HEX. Now, if I go and then I can see the days since they last interacted with HEX, and when they did a first HEX transaction and a last HEX transaction, and then if we go to like category 12, let's say, there's 29 people who meet the category of HEX billionaires in HEX terms. How many HEX do they have? Do they have a billion HEX or more? There's 29 plus the 3 that were in the higher categories. So there's like 32 addresses with a billion coins or more. And then
and before you go a little bit further with that, just to point out, these are known addresses, right? Because people see them all the time. Like this is Godwell, one of the addresses, right? So okay. I mean it should track that be the case, right?
Good. And then so there's category 12 that you have there. That's HEX billionaires, so to speak. And then if we go to category 11, these are people who have in between 100 million HEX and a billion HEX. I'm trying to read 407. There we go. 407 of those addresses. And then we've got the next category down, category 10, is people who have 10 million to 100 million HEX, 2,700 addresses there. And of the people who have, people who have exactly 1 million coins is like 14. And then people who have 1 million to 10 million is 10,800 addresses.
I would have preferred. I think I'll change it eventually here. Where I'll do a greater sign, but I copied that format to make it look the same, and that's how they did it. So the millions are in the first one, and then everything above 1 million to 10 million is in the second one.
Cool. And so all in all, there are 14,041 addresses as of today that have accrued or hold liquid 1 million HEX or more.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive, isn't it?
And if you turn back on the OA, how does this number change?
Oh yeah, that's a good one. Let's turn the OA on, and then we'll look at the OA alone, because that's another one to look at. So let me turn both of them on. I just control-clicked those to get them both. And you see that the numbers switch around a lot, right? Because you now have quite a bit more tokens. They're being accounted for at different levels.
So the total number jumps up to 16,800. So it does look like it's accounting for a couple thousand addresses that could be related.
I think when we're tracking it, it comes to around 3,000 addresses.
Okay.
So it's 2,700 here, but I think overall, I think it was around 3,000. And some of them, I don't know, because I haven't gone and tracked it. I got to tell you, even though I consider the OA to be important, I can't think more and more. I think more and more that I should just ignore whether or not we think it's OA. It's just another wallet, because over time they become less and less important. And really, judging the wallet addresses based on what they've done is more important than how they were necessarily created, maybe. Anyway, it's just something that I've been thinking about with the analysis. you know, because I can never prove what's what anyways, you know.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate both perspectives. I go back and forth depending on how deeply I'm thinking about it, and kind of, another thing that surprised me recently, and it's a good example of how kind of the signal that gets amplified from the crowd sometimes isn't the true signal. I've seen a survey that I did, probably had 500 or 1,000 people because it was during the HEX conference. And I've seen other people do surveys that showed the same thing, that like out of hundreds of respondents, like 85% of people support the OA, like the OA, don't have a problem with the OA and the HEX origin address. And then you've got only like these 15% of people who even voted to say that they don't like it or that they've got a problem with it. And I would have guessed that it was, I don't know, half and half, or at least, twice as many people, maybe a quarter of people were not liking it. So it's, very, very interesting that even though the OA does things that are unpopular at multiple times, things that surprised people, things that were unpopular, that it still has like an 85% approval rating. Like, how's that possible? How are we not talking about that? How fascinating is it of a social and a crypto experiment to have an 85% approval rating on this this actor that we can see on chain.
Yeah. Well, it's crazy, right? Because it all depends on the person's perspective and how they want to go after things and look at things. But nobody explains to me about the whales in BTC. And so depending on who you are, you might fret and complain about that. Like all these whales that are out there and they're going to dump on your head. But because it didn't have a face to it, is not, there's no lightning strike, it's just a little bit back grumbling. You don't hear much at all about anybody bitching about Ethereum whales. I mean, very, very rarely, right? About all that being controlled. And again, you can see it on chain, right? You see how that's all brought up. You can look at XRP and they get lots of lightning strikes there, right? Because who is the biggest controller of that was Ripple, right? With the whole monthly distributed amount. Anyways, you have all these tokens out there, and it really seems that mostly the ones that get the flack are the ones where people actually are transparent and tell the truth. Right? Because there's somebody to blame, point your finger at. And if you're looking for opportunity to FUD, and some people do it for fun. Sometimes I FUD just for fun in the past, not in HEX, but like just you screw around. But maybe they do that because they want the price to move. Maybe they are waiting, for that. Like there's been some funky FUD this week, a lot of real funky FUD, right? Just to make things move. Anyways, I digress. Sorry about that, but I think maybe
has
it's
there
just
been
because
FUD this week?
Yeah, it's stupid things. Nothing worth repeating.
Fair enough.
Mostly questioning the absence of Richard. So it was nice to see the update today.
He was just waiting for his favorite night, Tuesday night.
Yeah. Well, people start saying silly things, right?
They do. Yeah, people do say silly things.
And then whatever. So let's go back over to this real quick, and I'll show you what I was getting at with this. So you can see the list and kind of go through it, and it's got some value. You can see how it's switched up. But let's look at the suspected OA addresses, which really just means like let's look at some of these really big addresses that most normal people aren't going to be able to accumulate these numbers of tokens, right? So again, the list gets nailed down pretty good. You see most of them are in the 10 million to 100 million range. But again, a little bit of a ratio effect here. 54% is in 2 of the addresses, right? And one thing that I didn't do, by the way, is I did not do anything to isolate sacrifice addresses. So that's probably needs to be weeded out in here somewhere. And I don't know the address numbers off the top of my head, but I'm going to guess. Would probably be a good guess that one of these might be one.
Yeah.
So this
you're thinking of not categorizing the sacrifice addresses the same?
Well, I think maybe given an option to exclude them. Like, if I'm not mistaken, I think DDC8 is actually that address, is one of the sacrifice addresses. But let's assume it is for a moment. Maybe you throw a button up here to exclude that, because what am I really trying to get at with the rich list? Yeah, I want to know about it. I want to know if the SAC address has that hex in it. But if I'm trying to analyze users and what they're doing, does it really matter to me what's happening with the sacrifice? It just kind of skews things, because that would be, 250 million, 350 million hex that I would take out of this analysis.
I think considering it separately.
Yeah, just the fact that it's here means that it's already been categorized as OA related according to that list.
Ben Davis says, thanks for the hard work. Vegan Trader said, what is a good site to see this data for other coins? And I suggested etherscan.io and take a look at the top holders tab is the closest thing you might get.
Yeah, you could do that. You could also do some searching for the rich lists, and there'll be some data. The thing is, I don't think without being a developer and wanting to really get in deep, I don't think you can get this data for most chains. And I don't think most chains even have it available. This kind of transparency. Mostly because so much happens off chain, or not off chain, but off behind the firewall of the
centralized exchanges. Yeah.
But
obscuring what the whole point of crypto is, transparency and accountability, and see what's happening.
Yep. And so for the people that do want to know about big addresses like this and are worried about what might be happening with them, you can look, right? What's our biggest discussion point is, hey, has anything happened with these anytime soon recently? What's going on with HEX, right? And so right away, I don't know what this means because I haven't gone to look at it, but we do have an address, which is that same one that I was looking at, which was a SAC address, which at least according to the blockchain 7 days ago, something happened with HEX. Maybe somebody sent some in, maybe somebody sent some out, maybe somebody can look it up. But 7 days ago, something happened. And that's all that's saying, is that something happened 7 days ago. And you get a lot of this trolling, of data and stuff.
There's an important point I want to make here about the OA in general, and why would we ever consider it separately from the other top holder addresses? And the reason comes back to game theory. The point is that that whoever creates a coin might have different incentives around whether they hold it for long term or they sell it. And it particularly makes sense that holders, even if they have no expectations of whether that address will ever sell or not, it's still really fascinating to look into this idea to say, well, maybe it becomes scary if an address or a founder or anybody has a history of dumping or, or a history of holding. And when you look at the amount of liquidity that exists in HEX, last I looked, it was only $1 million or something. And that leads into this deeper thinking that people can do about liquidity to say, well, that makes it so that, first of all, the person or the addresses or whatever that are holding hundreds of millions of HEX can't get out into dollars significantly. And if they did, it would create super cheap HEX for people until that's stabilized. And so it really, in my opinion, creates the game theory incentive for people to hold longer term, or for these addresses that are huge. They, you know, in my estimation, they're less likely to sell than if there was a massive amount of liquidity and HEX was, you know, peaking in other regards. So having low liquidity is also, it's a good thing, I think, for the medium to long-term growth of a coin, because it means that people who dump now are getting less because they're eating more slippage on the automated market maker. And so it's like, it's a complex topic, but it's something we'll keep coming back to on the show, because I think it's so important to understand the pros and cons of low liquidity, the pros and cons of having, you know, a group of addresses that seem to control a large amount, but also seem to have an incentive to not sell. And you can verify with tools like this, and with these types of analyses, you can verify whether this, you know, this transaction that we see, you know, for that one address that was 7 days ago, was that, you know, receiving something, or was it, you know, HEX being sold? Is that something we can pull up now? Just
Yeah, you're gonna make
for our
me do
own
it.
curiosity.
And now I want to go see too what's
Yeah.
going on. I want to see what's happening. All right. So I'm gonna go over to, let's go for the 1 day one first, just see what happened. Okay. Now, in theory, you know what? This is CO3, so that I'm not going to bother to pull that one up. So that's that is an address that receives the penalties. Right?
Ah, okay.
That
Cool.
one. All right, second one down. I'm going to copy the value real quick. I'm going to open a new panel here. I'm going to go to etherscan.io. I'm going to go into the search by, paste that address. And you're going to see, what are we going to see? $6 billion worth of crypto. My God, is that what that is? I don't know. Let's look. Yeah. Can you see my screen? Okay.
Yeah. So this address has 250 billion HEX, or million.
250 billion HEX.
250 billion HEX.
Mm-hmm.
Not bad. Not bad.
Yeah, it's a pocket change for me, but yeah.
It has $279 million worth of DAI stable coins.
So this is the PulseX sacrifice address, right? So how do I know that? Because the name tag came up, but I also remember I mentioned the DC8 number. So what's going on here, right? So what's happening? So let's see.
People are still sacrificing.
So yeah,
Don't do that.
That's probably what ended up happening, right? So if we go look under ERC20 coins, we're going to look at the last HEX. Yeah, 7 days ago, somebody sent 6,400 HEX in. So that's what happened.
And even hours ago, people were moving ETH into there, or what?
Well,
I was looking at it.
Let's see, that's 5 days. I'll go back to the other screen. Yeah, somebody's sending Ethan.
Okay.
They think they're funny. I know.
Maybe they're trying to game it. Maybe they're trying to game an airdrop that they think could happen in the future.
Yeah, airdrop.
Like a weight token or something. Not that one specifically, but
yeah, I could see a lot of reasons. I don't know. I guess I won't guess. I think positive. Maybe somebody just thinks they're going to get some pulse out of it. You know. But yeah, I mean, that's how you can go check on those things and see what's happened to them and why.
Cool.
They've been there. Now, I should be able to do is, you know, just be able to do a drill through. That would get to that data eventually, right? You just click through it and go see what's happened. But that's several layers more of data that I've got to get to be able to do that kind of thing, you know, to actually go see, you know, what the addresses are that they're interacting with, that type of thing. Might not be in this current version for sure. But yeah, man, so this is kind of it, right? I mean,
awesome.
Just this idea that we have the data, it's available. You You come in here and look at it and do your own sorting. I'm going to say no on OA related. We've got it at 1 million or more HEX, which we have here. And then the other thing you could do is play around with the days, and see, what hasn't moved in the last 30 days, versus
Wow.
the last 300 days, and just see, how much has been hanging out there. If we drag this all the way back to, let's make it 1,000 days, pretty round number, right? So quite a bit of what's out there hasn't, there haven't been any transactions in a very, very long time.
Wow.
Now, of course, some comparison charts might be nice, rather than trying to eyeball this and remember what we're doing screen to screen. But, being able to do some sort of reporting to show that. And there are a couple sites out there that have some information like this, so, well, maybe not like this.
Is this live now, or are you showing us a preview?
It's as live as I can make it. So it's it's about every 4 hours. So if we go look at one, let's just look at one for one day. Let's look at transactions, see if we have anything to transact in the last day. So that's the 23rd, right? So today's the 24th, so it may not be that anything in this area has that, right? Let's say, let's go all the way to 0. See how this is updated. Yeah, so for this particular data, this is coming down with my nightly download. Shout out again to HEX Daily Stats. So this is how this is getting populated at the moment. So it's going to be 1 day behind for when I've gotten the download. So it'll be for the 23rd. I think that's how it's working.
So you can play with this portal yourself by going in the description below or typing in your browser hexfire.io. And ChrispyMan, are you ready to talk about the new support method that you have for people to support?
Oh, sure.
You?
Yeah, we can talk about that. Yeah, because I'm looking for some feedback on it too, on what people think.
Yeah.
So one of the things I know I just briefly mentioned it to you. So I finally a bunch of people have mentioned me, hey, why don't you start a Patreon? And I had to think that over for a while, before I would actually do it. And so I've gone forward. So I guess I'll just cut to the chase. So I launched a Patreon, and the purpose of it is to keep this data or this site up and running for free. So rather than kind of going out and saying, oh, here's a paywall, you got to pay to get in. What I wanted to do is keep this up for free and then set up a Patreon and then add some additional perks to it. So I've got that now up on the site as well. So you can link through it to go do it. And with the idea of being able to provide maybe early access to some of the stuff that I'm working on. Also to put in your suggestions and polls about what to do, what next to take on. A lot of, believe it or not, most of the material I start working on has to do with people making requests, right? Or I'll see something like what Wales was looking at and go, oh, that's pretty cool, and go work on that and see if we can actually build it that way. Yeah, so that's what I did. And so on the site, there's a Patreon link if you're interested, and that you can go through to get there and sign up. And then some people have used Patreon before. So I don't know, Matt, do you have any questions? God probably didn't explain it very well. You asked me if I was ready to talk about it. I probably should be giving more detail, I guess. I don't know.
Well, I think the price point that you mentioned of $9.99 a month, like that sounds pretty cool. Like that's not asking too much at all to support the amazing work that you're doing for the community. So that's really solid. And and then I think like having a way for people to drop money directly to you if it's a donation address, or a way for Patreon to process people who want to give more is cool. But I think like I just really respect the way that you're trying to keep it open, so that there's not a paywall for everybody, and that people can pitch in, and very cool thing that you're doing there. And I hope a lot of people subscribe. Now, do you have the link to your Patreon that you can tell us?
I do. And I just got my first member, believe it or not.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll throw that Patreon over to you for posting. Yeah, Maddie, how I was kind of, I don't know. I probably am like one of these people that we hear about. You're like, I don't believe in that kind of thing, right? Because the way I've grown up and the way I think about things, I'm like, I don't want to go out and beg for money for something that I'm doing because I like what I'm doing, and say I feel that way. And then you have the backlash of, we've seen it within the community, and I get it because I'm part of the community too. And you're like, oh, you're putting this behind a firewall. You're not sharing the information with everybody. But then you come back around, you're like, well, so how do things get done? How do you do this stuff? And then of course, even though I've been in sales, right? I'm not like the shill guy, right? So like it feels odd to me to go, hey, go to my site and like and subscribe. Like you had to probably practice that a little bit, right? To
Oh yeah.
get started. Like go to my Patreon and if you like what we're doing and do this. So I guess my compromise is add some extra stuff in there, you know, and that it actually is additional content for people who do participate, and then that kind of helps me figure out whether people want to continue, want this stuff to continue and to what level. Because ahead of us, we've got a lot more. I've got a lot more work coming because we're going to have a new chain, and we're going to figure out how those two are going to work together and get all the data, for both to replicate that. And then for and this isn't for today, but for maybe a few months down the road, got sort of a roadmap put together where people can go in and do their own what if analysis, downloads, etc. But when I get to that level, there's a whole nother, layer of cost, right? That comes in with licensing and also being able to have access and manage administratively, all that stuff. Anyways, if anybody's interested and they want to do it, I'd appreciate it.
And I just dropped the link there in the live stream chat. ChrispyMan's Patreon, patreon.com/user U equals 877000713.
Man, you're smarter than I am. It took me a while to figure out I had to put the HTTPS. So.
That's right. Well, when
you
I
had that experience,
yeah. Well, when I had to convert all my HTTPs to HTTPSs, I learned how that works.
Yeah, use the full address. Yeah. So thanks, Maddie. Thanks for the good words and thanks for the shout out on that.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for making awesome stuff. Now, I want to shout out to Thoughtchild here because he did a really cool segment on his show about what he thinks should be in the Richard Hart Museum. And I thought,
really? I missed that one.
I actually had the same idea. I probably streamed about it at one point, but I haven't brought it up in a long time. And I suspect that I am almost certain he reached his conclusion totally separately, and that it's kind of cool to me as well that everybody in the HEX community who's been here a while, can recall all these really interesting details and kind of put together the history of HEX in their own way and in a collective way as well. And so I would also, so I'd plug people to go check out. I think Torin made a clip of his thing of his idea, and then he also did a stream about it. And then also, I mean, if people are ever wanting to go back and see where Richard has said something, you can go to hexsearch.io, And I just announced the other day that it's actually my developer who is doing the front end for Time Pays Me is the same person who made the tool hexsearch.io, and really appreciate his contributions and like plugging the cool stuff that he's made. And so people who go to hexsearch.io can look up a term. Did Richard ever talk about a moving dolly? Did Richard ever talk about a museum that he's going to make?
Yes, he did. He talked about a dolly. I remember that.
And it'll pull up the exact spot in the YouTube video where Richard said it. Let me do a little demonstration here. Hexsearch.io. I'm going to share my screen. Yeah, he Thoughts Child says it's a 20-minute video on his channel.
Oh, it's not 6 hours. I could go to bed early at night and get up 6-7 hours later. Thought that I was still on. He's still running the stream, you know.
I can search for all the times Richard brought up heating and cooling.
Nice.
Or where he brought up TShares. Oh, that one's not working for some reason.
Probably T-Dash.
Red Bull. Here we go. Since he's brought up a Red Bull.
Hey,
can.
you know, there's different sizes of Red Bull cans. I'm just saying, look it up.
That's right.
I don't want to feed into that, but
that's right. You got like here's my Pulse X colored red and green Red Bull. I mean, you could look for yourself. Did Richard mention Maddie Allen? And it's bringing up Matic as well, but this overall does a really, really good job of picking out words and that sort of thing. Oh, maybe I just need to look all in. Yeah, so a really powerful tool, especially for people who are wanting to make clips and maybe get big on TikTok without even showing their faces yet. There are lots of really cool ways that somebody could use hex search. You could, make a compilation, or you could just pull up like, when did Richard talk about FTX, right? And boom, it's there. All the times that he brought up FTX, and you can click on each link. So if I click here on the stream that was October 24th, 2020, when he mentioned it, and I could sort also by oldest, and I could see when's the first time that Richard brought up FTX was October 24th, 2020. And then you guys can't hear it because I didn't share my tab, but I didn't share the sound. But basically this has jumped directly to the spot in the YouTube video, 31 minutes and 23 seconds in, where Richard is bringing up with the guy from Data Dash. He's bringing up his thoughts on FTX. So how cool is that?
it's good. I remember from the first time.
Then the most recent time he brought it up, what it looks like, was when he streamed with Miss Teen Crypto on July 11th. And these are, in general, I believe hexsearch.io is referencing videos that Richard has uploaded onto his channel. So if he did an interview on another channel and chose to not upload it onto his YouTube, I don't think it's indexed here, which is important to note. But yeah, thanks again to Chris for creating this awesome tool and contributing to Time Pays Me as well.
I'm going to get that link for Thothschild.
Awesome. Yeah, that'd be great.
I don't know if is he still on with us?
Yeah.
Hey, why don't you send that over to me on Telegram, and I'll get it to Maddie right now. We'll see if we get it. That's why I get the right video that he wants. Well, hey, big shout out to Y, whoever Y is. I don't know who that is, but my first Patreon.
All right.
Oh, thank you. Hopefully not the only one, but we'll see how it goes. No, I think we'll be pretty packed at some point. There's lots of stuff, man. You know, one of the problems I have, Maddie, with the work that I do is, you know, it's sometimes not the right audience. Like this audience is probably a very good audience for most of what I do. You know, meaning the people who tune into your show. But whether it's Twitter or Telegram, and Telegram's a little bit better because I have my own, you know, I have my own Telegram and Discord, and so I have members that are out there that participate. So that's a little bit better, but otherwise it's kind of like hit or miss. You know, it's kind of like if you're not ready to look at information, this kind of level of detail, it really is not interesting to you. You know, I might as well just put a big green candle up on the screen with an arrow pointing up, and that would be enough. You know.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I, you know, I would also remind people that whether you're a content creator or a content viewer, it really it's the quality of the people watching, not just the number. And when we look at, let's say, how many people were watching at the 3rd annual HEX conference, you know, there were just so many hours combined of people watching. People were watching for 40 minutes. That's a completely different profile of person. That's a completely different relationship that you have with the viewer and with the community as a whole than people who are watching 45 seconds on a TikTok. And we need both. We need people to get pulled in with shorter content, but we also want to have substance, I believe. And that's so for the people who are here, shout out to you, because you're the ones who, you know, have been in some cases watching for 113 weeks on Tuesday nights, who have been tuning in because you like the depth of the conversations and of the analysis and everything. And so, you know, whether you started watching when the show was called Quant Gang, you know, that was short for quantitative analysis. There was a need that, you know, people really wanted and needed to understand the math behind HEX and the analytical insights. And then, you know, and then changing the name to Game Theory Gang just made a lot of sense because game theory is such an important part of the equation, even really more than just the math side of things that we had covered. And so I really love that ChrispyMan is able to still bring us so much fresh quantitative analysis on HEX. And I think you do also a great job of commenting on things in general and being ethical and knowing just a lot of the history of HEX. So.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate that. Of course, I appreciate your enthusiasm and
Yeah.
that of the audience, you know, and what people
Yeah.
are going after. I think I'm quite reserved, you know, in how I talk about things, particularly when we do our public stuff. So there's a lot of content, a lot more detail that I get into in the private chats, you know, because it's a little bit easier to be sure that people will take you at your word as to not financial advice type of stuff, and that you're just sharing your experiences, that type of thing. But yeah, you know, we all have a tale, and you know, whoever it is that's doing the speaking about how they got to where they're at, and it's all you generally, I shouldn't say generally, almost always there's valuable insight, you know, in hearing somebody's backstory and how they got to where they're at. And you know, my objective, right? It comes pretty close to yours, right? Is you know, delayed gratification, passive income, financial freedom. You know, And I think that's what ties most of us together that are in the community.
Absolutely.
Anyways, I realize you're trying to end this stream, so
Am I?
I don't know. It sounded like I don't want to keep you talking.
I think we've kind of reached a natural end where we talked about everything we said we were going to talk about today. We started off with the updates from Richard on t.me/hex news about PulseChain V3 and what the devs are working on there. And it, you know, that came out minutes before we went live. And so we were excited to cover that. I expect there to be more commentary on that on Twitter and elsewhere, other people's YouTube channels. I noticed Fashion Coder has been putting out great videos recently about, you know, what's going on with Hex. So check out her channel, youtube.com/fashioncoder6. And yeah, everybody else who's covering it, thanks for making sense of the progress that's being made on PulseChain. We also talked about some clues about my next meetup that is going to be announced once the planning gets done for that. And so that's something to look forward to. We also talked about this great tool that is in the thumbnail to be able to look at the Hex rich list and really understand like what's been accrued to this point, not just the top 100 liquid addresses, but a much deeper look at what those accounts have been doing and being able to filter the list based on the origin address or not. So good stuff there. And yeah, so I think that that about wraps things up. So let me go ahead and remind everybody to hit the like and subscribe button. Let me see if there's somebody we can raid tonight. I'm in a raiding mood.
Hey, on my site, or YouTube, I started posting up more videos. So I put the year-end video up. It kind of goes through the year-end report that I have. So if anybody wants to see that, head on over, hexfire.io, YouTube, hexfire.io.
Please check that out. And if you want to keep watching great content, I have a link here to Randy Hilarski, who's live now. And all I ask is when you go visit Randy's stream, please let him know who sent you and that we're rating him from Maddie's stream. Randy's a great Hexakin. So I'm linking to his stream.
I try not to miss one of his shows ever.
Yeah. And he's streaming like 5 days a week now, isn't he?
Yeah, he's been pretty reliable with that too.
Very consistent.
He's setting a standard between him and Thothschild, man. I can't keep up. Him.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm gonna have to get up and just like go right to my computer, start filming, man. Start taping.
Do you listen on 2X?
No. No, but sometimes I'll tape on 2X.
So thanks everybody for tuning in. I'll be back on Thursday night for Hex Therapy Live special, probably a special episode there of reading some messages that people have sent me about how Hex changed their life when it comes to addiction or mental health. So really looking forward to getting back to the thesis on that stream that has been going for 113 weeks. And make sure to follow ChrispyMan on YouTube and now Patreon, Twitter, and of course, hexfire.io. Thanks everybody for being here. And until next time, I got to get the end screen queued up here. Until next time, stake wisely, my friends, and peace out.
Goodbye.